So this is great. We have state agencies on the line, we have utilities on the line. These are the primary eligible entities for the Spark programs. And we're looking to understand the Spark programs, the application process, who to partner with, and kind of across the board. So we'll try and touch on all of these items and also make sure that we point you to the right resources to get deeper on them as well, covering what we can in 1 hour. All right, can everyone see my screen properly? Great. Um, all right, so today we are covering the speed to power through accelerated reconductoring and other key advanced transmission technology upgrades funding program. Um, this is hosted by the Watt and AMP coalitions. We are trade associations for grid enhancing technologies and high performance conductors. We are committed to complying with the letter and spirit of all federal and state laws, including antitrust laws, and to maintain the highest ethical standards in the work of the coalitions. So I'm just emphasizing, even on this slide, you don't need to work with a vendor to submit a concept paper, but they are all on the line, or many of them are on the line. They're ready to help you with your application. But this is truly, we're trying to represent the industry in the space of available solutions. So today we'll cover a little bit of background, much of which you have in your email, but I'll just direct you to it. Some goals of how we hope you use this webinar. We'll get into the timeline for Spark, the purpose of Spark, and then ideas for concept papers. We'll dig into the topic areas and eligibility a bit and cover Q&A, hopefully for a good 15-20 minutes or more, and further resources. So in terms of background, we did send you to the DOE Notice of Funding Opportunity and their recent webinar. That webinar walks through the Notice of Funding Opportunity very, you know, fulsomely, is that the word? So I would say that's required reading and watching to submit the grants. You will be thrilled to see how everything you need is in this DOE resource. I also sent about grid enhancing technologies and about high performance conductors, resources for kind of getting up to speed with what these technologies are. I'll follow up with more in-depth resources that can help fill in the content of the concept papers. Now, I also sent some examples of past federal grant awards for grid enhancing technologies that were submitted under GRIP, the precursor to the Spark program. That goes to show that even when the program had a much wider focus, grid enhancing technologies and high performance conductors were still getting funded. Today, the Spark program is fully focused on GETs and HPCs. I see someone has a hand raised. If you could put your question in the chat, or sorry, the Q&A, that would be ideal. Thank you. So this is what's already in your email, and feel free to let us know through the Q&A or by email if there's any other resources you would like to see. All right, so you have in your email as well a member directory for the Watt and AMP coalition, so you have contact information for all of these companies who can work with you on a application. You see Eitan Elkin on the phone from Prisma Photonics, Corey Hauser and Luke Howell from Ampassimon, Robert Mork from Heimdall Power, Garrett Oster from Line Vision. I don't think we have anyone from Lindsay or Nline, but the dynamic line rating companies are well represented and you have their contact information. Joe Hunter from TS Conductor, Paige Rodriguez from CTC Global, Jay Vitha from Medox, or sorry, Veer, excuse me. And then also contact information for Medox. And then Pablo Ruiz from New Grid on topology optimization, and Ted Block Rubin from SmartWires for advanced power flow control. So these folks are ready to help you work out your concepts and then dive into the full application. All right, what are we doing on this webinar? Part of the goal, or a big part of the goal, is to connect you with these vendors. So use sorry, not the chat function, the Q&A function for any questions, and they are ready to respond to them in writing. So we'll ask you to multitask a little bit with audio and text content. If you are looking for examples of, even your specific grid problem, you have conductors this old at this voltage, um, you can throw that in the chat and see what folks can help you with. At the same time, this webinar is being recorded. Consider it public. We're going to be sharing it. So just want to make that very clear. Then, as you wrap up your concept papers and go into your full applications, Colin Meehan, who used to run the or manage the GRIP program at uh, the Grid Deployment Office, will be having a webinar sharing best practices next week. So, Colin, do you want to give a little more information about that opportunity?
Sure. Thanks, Julian. Thanks for having me here. The webinar next Tuesday is really intended to help potential applicants find the best, develop the best application, the most effective application. So what I'm trying to do is really go beyond what the DOE's webinar presents, which is very important. And as Julia said, required reading or required viewing, absolutely. But really to give folks a little bit of insight on what will make your application most compelling, based on my experience at least. Anybody on this call is welcome to join. The way that the link is set up is for kind of ACORE members only, but as a part of our cross-promotional work here today, if you would like to join and you're not an ACORE member, please send me an email. I can make sure that you've got my contact information and I'll make sure that you can get in.
Great. Thank you so much, Colin. And we will, Zach, maybe can you post the ACORE link in the chat? Great. Apparently the QR code was not working. So thanks for the quick feedback, everyone. Another opportunity for further support after this webinar comes from the Great Plains Institute. Matt, I will pass it to you.
Thanks, Julia. Great to be here. My name is Matt Proark. I'm a policy director at Great Plains Institute. We're a nonprofit organization focused on getting a lot more transmission and transmission capacity built across the country, amongst other things. We have provided technical assistance and grant writing support to a number of organizations in prior rounds of the GRIP program, as well as the Transmission to Siting and Economic Development TSED program, which were rolled out in prior years. And so are offering that support again to potential applicants. Our focus is largely with states and nonprofits who may need the extra capacity and resources. We are offering this free of charge. We have other funding that's covering our time. So really, we're prepared to help folks think through ideas, brainstorm together, bring the parties needed to put a competitive application together, and even support some development of project concepts. We also have a number of tools and checklists and things that can help organize and structure the full application development process just to streamline it, having lived through it. And as I'm sure many of you know, it can be very complex and there are a lot of moving pieces to make sure you're pulling together. So just please consider us a resource if we can be of any assistance. And I will send my contact info over to Zach to put in the chat, along with two other colleagues, Benjamin Stafford, who I believe is on the call here, as well as our colleague Trisha Treese. And the three of us are all the folks you can feel free to reach out to at any time if you'd like to talk. So thank you so much and hope to talk with you all more soon.
Great. Thanks, Matt. And the moral of the story is we're not doing this webinar and leaving you on your own. Everyone here is looking forward to collaborating. And at the end, we will ask if there's anything else we can do to help follow up. So if as you're going through this, you think, man, I wish they had drilled down a little more into XYZ, please let us know and we'll see what we can do for you. So with that, let's get into the program itself. Speed to power is in the name. Speed to power is the timeline before us as well. So it is a quick turnaround, but I think there are reasons to not feel too bad about that. So one, the concept paper, which is due next week, is non-binding. It's truly you raising your hand and saying, I'm interested in doing a full application. You have to do a concept paper to submit a full application, but you can significantly change your concept between the concept paper and the application. You will eventually get feedback from DOE on the concept paper. Technically, it's an encourage or discourage, but regardless, you will probably have to be working on your application before you get that feedback from DOE. So, because of this tight timeline. So, our point here is get those concept papers in, don't wait necessarily for feedback. Get going on bringing those people together the way Matt mentioned and building the full application. The good news about a fast timeline is you get a fast response, and they do want the period of performance to be 48 months from the award. So that's important. In grid time, that is even faster than the application period, I think. But luckily, these technologies can be deployed very quickly. So this is the overview of the timeline. I'm going to check the chat for questions. I recommend sending your questions through the Q&A if possible. I believe folks have access to that. If there's a problem with that, let me know. But that way, everyone can respond in a more threaded way. I think the chat will get a little messy, and not everyone can respond to the chat. So if you have put a question in the chat, actually, please put it in the Q&A. All right. So this is the timeline. What is this program? At a high level, it's $1.9 billion in federal matching funds. So that at a high level again will be $4 billion of grid modernization investment, which we are so excited about. The target, if you read through the NOFO, it's really for grid enhancing technologies, the three categories I listed on the logo slide: dynamic line readings, advanced power flow control and topology optimization, and high performance conductors, which are carbon composite core conductors and superconductors. That's really the focus of this program. And the project should increase capacity quickly, improve reliability quickly, or address affordability, again, quickly in that 2-year time frame, or 4-year time frame, excuse me. So this means, like I mentioned before, this is a really targeted program. It's going to be, if you, I'll say, if you have a really strong application on GETs and HPCs, that is what I think the DOE is looking for. I will say vendors generally can't be applicants, or it might not make sense for them to be applicants. So we're talking to utilities, we're talking to state agencies. You all are the primary applicants for this program, and the vendors are here to support you. On that note, again want to demystify and make the concept papers seem doable. So about half of the content in the light purple in the concept paper is pretty generic. We have it on our website in various forms. Vendors can provide that information. And then half the content is your local story. What does your grid need? What is facing your region at this time? What is the impact of addressing those constraints? So if you think about the specific local story, that might be 2 or 3 pages out of 4. So we're talking about a really high level vision in this concept paper, which should be achievable in the week that is left. So what I will encourage everyone to do is look across technologies as a way to hit the goals in the NOFO. So for infrastructure replacement or sort of hard investment, they want to see 50% capacity increase. And for more dynamic capacity increases or software-based increases, they're looking for 25% capacity. So generally, those numbers are reasonable for GETs and high-performance conductors. But if you combine the technologies, you both get better value for your investment. You're putting in some lower cost technologies and some higher cost technologies, and you're making sure that, altogether you're hitting those goals. So these bullets here are sort of the one simple way to go about thinking about deploying these technologies. So for high performance conductors, these are new conductors that can increase capacity compared to the traditional conductors by 200% or doubling the capacity. You can look at what new transmission and what reconductoring projects are already planned in your region. That's how you can get this done within 4 years, I think. So look at what's already coming and look at which of those might make sense to reconductor with high performance conductors. I think that's also positions you for a reasonable federal cost share because you can look what is the incremental cost of using high performance conductors? What are the terminal upgrades? Which substation equipment am I going to have to upgrade to manage this increased flow? And kind of put the federal cost share towards those costs. And then when you're looking at what is the impact to the ratepayer, they're paying what they would have paid before without using new technologies. And the government is covering that incremental cost. With dynamic line ratings, put them on all thermally limited lines and all lines that are, say, over 30 years old. That way you will know the true capacity of those thermally limited lines, potentially addressing the thermal limit and increasing capacity on those lines. And then for your older lines, you'll be able to use the DLR data to know whether that line is actually in perfect shape or whether it's aged much faster than you expected because of annealing or some other factor and needs to be replaced sooner. So this is a resilience and capacity play. Then topology optimization software. This is software that optimizes the capacity of your grid based on real conditions. If you're a transmission planner, you know that the grid you plan, or if you're a grid operator, you know that the grid that is planned is not necessarily the one that you have to operate. Outages happen, generators have to get maintenance, etc. So this software tells you, well, given the scenario that you're in, what is the best configuration of your grid? And in case studies, we see often 20 to 50% congestion relief, 5 to 25% capacity increase, and it's just software, no new stuff on the grid. You can definitely get that done in far less than 48 months. So just integrate it into your grid operations and planning, and that's a simple one. With advanced power flow control, you will need to do a little more scoping to figure out exactly where on the grid does power flow control give you value. But that can be done in the full application. And the recent deployments around the country, especially PG&E and Georgia Power, have great examples recently. Found 100 megawatts plus in capacity increase just from managing power flow control. And with other upgrades, that can go up to 500 megawatts, et cetera. So definitely worth looking at all of the technologies, put them all in your concept paper. And then once you get into the application, you can figure out which you want to take. So that is my big message of the day is that you can put these all in concept papers and go ahead into the full application. What we hope you do is pick one of these ideas, and we'll go into other examples too with the rest of the time we have. Pick an idea today. If you want support from a vendor, if you have questions, get in touch with them today so that you can meet that April 2 deadline. On the NOFO webinar, the DOE did encourage everyone to submit 48 hours in advance of the deadline, just in case of technical difficulties. I know that probably doesn't help anyone, but again, this is a maximum 6-page document that they're asking for, non-binding, just to get started and put your hand up and say, I'm interested in federal funding. I'm going to quickly go through some final slides, but please be active in the Q&A, and we will have discussion with the vendors in response to your questions. So moving on, in case I haven't made it clear, the projects need to be executed in 48 months. And one thing, another reason to include multiple technologies is that grid enhancing technologies can be applied to take outages or to manage outages when you need to do reconductoring. They've been applied around the country, or around the world, I'll say. In this context, when you use, say, an advanced power flow controller for 3 years to manage an outage, you save a bunch of money on congestion. You're able to actually take that outage. And then at the end of those 3 years, you still have the advanced power flow controller. You can deploy it somewhere else on your grid. So these are dynamic line ratings, same story. You can take the sensors off your towers or your lines and move them somewhere else. But they're probably still useful where they are at the end of any construction period. So another reason to fold in multiple technologies. Um, the eligible entities are only allowed to submit one concept paper per topic area. So that's another reason I would say to include multiple technologies in your concept paper, just in case you want to narrow it down later. You're not allowed to submit multiple concept papers per topic area, but you are probably eligible in multiple topic areas. So my next slides take us through the topic areas in more detail. This wall of text is roughly copied and pasted from the notice of funding. I think it took me about an hour maybe to read the NOFO part one. So it's very worthwhile. But the topic area one is grid resilience. We're looking at 5 to 10 awards. And overall, we're looking at somewhere around 50 awards, I would say, across the 3 topic areas. And we have 92 participants on this webinar, and maybe half of those are vendors. So if you all each submit one application, you may all get get a win. So I want to say that while this is a competitive grant program, it is very targeted, and I think that you that you have a good shot. There are some good questions in the chat, so if folks want to chime in and answer those member companies, you should be able to answer, and if you cannot, please let me know and we will. Okay, I see people typing answers. Amazing. All right. Okay, so topic area one, grid resilience, awards of $10 to $100 million. Eligible entities are the people who own the grid, mostly. And across the board, these are grid upgrades. The transmission owners have to be a partner, essentially, in these projects, as far as I'm concerned. I will highlight that what I was really excited to see in the NOFO, this is probably true in past grant programs, and I'd missed it. Small utilities are only required to contribute 25% of the cost, whereas standard cost matches up to 50% from the federal government. So generally, the utilities or state agencies would contribute 50% or more. Small utilities only contribute 25% of the cost, and 30% of this $427 million is set aside for small utilities. So I said everyone had a good shot. Small utilities have a great shot, I think, of getting some relief for your ratepayers on upgrades that you probably need to do at some point. And now the Department of Energy is saying, let's do them now. So they're looking for reconductoring with advanced high capacity, low sag conductors to increase capacity along existing rights of way. So straightforward. And then deploying advanced transmission technologies, grid enhancing technologies to enhance transfer capacity, reduce congestion, and improve situational awareness. Hopefully everyone kind of understands how the GETs do those things. But I will say, if you ask me what do GETs do, I would list these 3 benefits, right? This is not a stretch. If you deploy GETs, this is what they will do. So you don't have to be that creative to meet the goals of topic area 1. And across the topic areas, you'll see different eligible entities, different planned award sizes, but the goals are pretty similar. So it really depends. Think of yourself and your eligibility and the scale of the project you're trying to do. But other than that, your GETs and high performance conductor projects can probably apply to different topic areas depending on the framing. So example concepts. Look at large load interconnection zones and look at upgrading specific lines tied to load growth plans and specific circuits. Again, it's not just reconductoring. You could deploy advanced power flow control. You could use dynamic line ratings, etc. And then the members can get more technical with you about how the technologies facilitate large load growth. So with high performance conductors, it's pretty clear. You double the carrying capacity of the line, straightforward. Some of the more dynamic technologies can help with sudden load ramps or flexibility during contingencies. So you don't just need to find more capacity on your grid, you need to um, you need to manage the contingencies that come along with adding significant load. Um, so reconductoring, improving resource adequacy. If you want to deliver more power or have access to more generation to meet load growth, reconductoring and grid enhancing technologies are a way to help with that. Another option is to use GETS to facilitate reconductoring and accelerate upgrades to get faster capacity. So that would be another framing, right, for these upgrades. You could also look at grid hardening at-risk corridors, so thinking about reconductoring or even undergrounding with a superconductor. Areas that might have high wildfire risk, you can look at deploying DLR to have better situational awareness in high wildfire risk areas, and APFC to redirect power flows during high risk scenarios, and topology optimization as well can help you with redirecting power flows. So topic area 1, I see that the Q&A is getting more active. So again, thanks to all of the vendors and folks on the panelist list who are helping answer those questions. All right, topic area 2, the smart grid has probably the widest eligible entities list and is also for smaller, not much smaller, $10 to $50 million awards, and it'll be 25 to 40 awards. So universities, nonprofits, and for-profit organizations, state and local governments or tribes. Again, utilities are not optional partners in this if you want to upgrade the grid. But the primary applicant can be almost anyone. So if you read through what they're looking for, you'll see there's a lot of overlap with the other programs, increasing transfer capacity, improving reliability, affordability, flexibility, enhanced data and control, communications automations, analytics. So this is a little less potentially about the hard grid upgrades, but like I said, kind of you can fit your project into any of these programs probably. And then replicable approaches, that I think tends to be at the bottom of the list of requirements, but DOE is still looking in terms of when they say we're looking for capacity, reliability, et cetera, affordability. Replicable approaches using this federal funding to make sure that other utilities can learn from your work remains a priority. So don't forget about that and include it in your application and concept papers. All right, so some similar but other ideas. Platform for grid efficiency. So you can think about combining the inputs from DLR, topology optimization, and feeding that into control systems, for instance, with advanced power flow control, to get a comprehensive platform for grid efficiency. That would be very cool. And then accelerating speed to power for large loads. We've heard about that one before. You can also look at, let's see, looking at how the rest of the grid feeds into the transmission grid and improving flexibility and visibility at those levels. Okay, topic area 3. These are the biggest awards, $100 million plus. There are going to be fewer of them, but they also encourage multi-state regional projects. So more folks involved in one award. They're looking for multi-jurisdictional demonstrations, expanding capacity between transmission planning regions, cross-regional capacity, novel planning and organizational approaches, and accelerating permitting and interconnection. So one great thing about grid enhancing technologies is you can go from, as a utility, go from talking to a vendor to having something in the field in less than a year. And so the acceleration element of GETS is really key. So you can look at grid congestion across the region. Um, we love to see that kind of thing. We did a study with the Brattle Group in 2021 that looked at Kansas and Oklahoma and looking at representative weather years, identified, I think, $90 million of GETS deployment across the region that would pay for itself in 6 months. So if you do that kind of comprehensive multi-technology study, you can find some really significant benefits. Looking at large load interconnection, again, makes sense here at a regional level. And probably you intuited this from the description of eligible projects, looking at upgrading seams between states or system operators could make a lot of sense, bumping up transfer capacity and reducing potential cost differences between those regions and also getting load online. So that is mostly what I wanted to talk about. We are only halfway through the webinar. We do have an appendix, and I will send these slides around so you can look at it. But again, I've just copied and pasted the NOFO information about what they are looking for. And I think this is the biggest one where you really have to be targeting that greater than 50% increase in power transfer for physical upgrades or greater than 25% for more operational upgrades. So vendors can help you figure those numbers out and make sure that your project is working. So I see still some questions coming in through the chat and experts answering them, which is great to see. So keep those coming. And experts on the line, you can also continue responding to any of the questions that have already been answered if you go into the answered window. I'm going to pause here and put up another poll to get a sense for what the next steps folks are looking for that we can help with as the Watt Coalition or vendors. So please let us know kind of where you're at now and what you'd be looking for. Okay, great. I'm seeing a number of answers for meetings for your category of applicants, small utilities, state energy offices, etc. I will need to hear from you or representative directly to know which category you represent, but we're happy to do a deeper dive and work with you on what information to cover and get that scheduled in the next week. Okay, what I see is that people still are looking for more information really across the board. Understanding the technology capabilities, understanding each topic area, and ATT's concepts. So we are happy to do that one-on-one, frankly, as well as we'll look into scheduling broader meetings. But again, I want to emphasize, let me go back to the call to action slide. Here we go. For the concept paper, I would encourage you to blast ahead. If there's something that is really holding you back that you're not sure about, feel free to ask us directly. But get the concept paper in, and then when it comes to the full application, we can definitely help you get more in the weeds on the different technology categories. All right, does anyone else want to answer this poll before I close it? All right. Okay. Well, just for everyone's curiosity, that's what we heard back from the poll. Are there any other questions? At this point, I will also invite company representatives if there's a question that you want to answer live. Feel free to come off mute and raise your point. There's one in the queue that I'm curious about. We don't have a utility partner on board yet, but would like to apply. Is it worth submitting a concept paper without a specific utility lined up? I have a spicy answer that I'm happy to share with the group, but if anyone else wants to chime in first. All right. I think if you submit a concept paper, oh, Colin, go ahead.
No, go for it.
All right. I think that if you submit a concept paper and get started on an application and you hear from DOE that your concept paper has been encouraged and your utility does not partner with you, that is nearly criminal. This is money on the table for the utilities. This is money that your ratepayers don't have to pay. So that's my view. If unless there's, you know, I can't imagine a reason that they would not be able to make use of this funding. So that's my view. Colin, do you
And
have a more nuanced opinion?
this is, I don't know about more nuance, but probably less spicy, and a little more kind of technocratic. But I would say for the concept paper stage, it's important to indicate that you have some real viable partnerships. And it would be ideal to mention utilities by name if possible, but you do not have to have a formal partnership at that point in time. I think they're going to be evaluating this based on how mature and likely you are to be able to execute. So if you just kind of say, we'll find a utility, that's probably not going to be as looked on as favorably.
Very reasonable. Note that it was answered live. Do any vendors who have done a GRIP application, which is pretty similar in structure to the Spark application, have words of wisdom for the participants today?
I'll chime in. Hi, folks. This is Ted Blackrubin from Smart Wires. We're an advanced power flow control company. I think looking back on the level of detail that's required in the full application, having a very good sense as early as possible of specifically, what substation you intend to install at, what the drivers for that installation are, having a good methodology, and then following through on establishing quantified benefits, 50 megawatt uplift, that kind of thing. That will allow you to start filling out the content of the application and, working through budgets, which we know require multiple teams within the utility. I think that takes time, and having a really good sense of what your project is as early as possible is useful. With that being said, everything we've said here is, you don't have to have that figured out at the concept paper stage, but we are here to help, run models and analysis to provide a good understanding of, and hone in on what those substation locations might be, and help you identify the benefits of the installation. So I think that's certainly what we saw in the first two rounds, is that there's quite a lot of detail that's needed for the full application, and the sooner you have a good sense of what you're doing, the better, which is maybe obvious, but really does help in the long run. Thanks, Julia.
Thanks, Ted. I also, something that I learned a bit about in preparing for this, and I would love for vendors to chime in on, is um, the difference between a subrecipient and a contractor in this process. You can see in the NOFO that foreign entities need a waiver to be a subrecipient, but potentially, I'm not sure if they need a waiver to be a contractor. Colin might have an idea there. But just pointing out the different levels of involvement that a vendor might have. Does anyone want to speak to kind of contractor versus subrecipient?
Um, just since you called me out, I'll say in general, in from what I understand, and I haven't been on the other side of this, just to be clear,
Mhm.
it's probably easier to be a subcontractor or a subcontractor than a subrecipient. There's a lot of diligence that goes through being a subrecipient, and it does, as some folks have noted in the answers, it does have the possibility of running into some of the Build America, Buy America restrictions and things like that.
Mhm.
I will just add to that, Aitan Elgin from Prism Photonics, that as I responded, several people responded in the answers. All all the vendors have U.S. entities. All the vendors have utility partners in the U.S. So again, it shouldn't be a problem. At not in the concept paper stage for sure. Moving on, it shouldn't be a problem.
And this is Robert Mork on Heimdall Power. I'll just jump in too. One of the things about this is that there's a very short deadline to get the concept papers on. You really don't need to identify your vendors at this point. You just need to get the concepts out there. Each of us is more than happy to work with you on that. And, who ends up doing the project is something that can be worked out as these things go along.
Absolutely. There is so much work to do on the US grid. These funds will help us get it going faster, get projects on board, build experience across the country with these technologies that have been commercialized and are more common practice around the world than they are here. So I'm so excited for this funding, but it's not the end of the road, right? If you worst case scenario, put together an application and don't get awarded funding for whatever reason, you still learned from that application and are potentially ready to do that project or a similar project um, down the line. So I think the DOE is looking to help get this done faster with this funding, but um, it's all effort well spent as far as I'm concerned. Maybe I'm biased.
No, Julie, I think that's exactly right. Garrett Oster, I'm with Line Vision, but I actually led a federal funding group for a large professional services company back in the day. And one of the things that we always advised, our clients on as they were pursuing these and we were writing them, with them was really think intentionally about how you're building these concepts and these applications to deliver real values to the communities that we all ultimately serve. And if you do that, you end up with a compelling narrative. And then when you start to bolster it with kind of the priorities of the department through that are really spelled out in the notice of funding opportunity and through everything we've seen out of, this administration, as well as, and that's AI dominance, that's building back American industry, that's all of those things, you end up with something that's really compelling, and that's what ultimately wins the day. And that's why, I love writing these and I love working with folks on them because they're fun to think about, not just what are the national priorities, but how do we ultimately deliver for communities. And that's what makes it successful.
Awesome. Thanks, Garrett. All right.
One
Are there
more
any other?
note
Yep,
here.
please.
I just wanted to say, Luke Howell here from Impassimon. If anybody needs any ideas to kind of kickstart their conceptual papers or just kind of jog their brain, we all have um, very well laid out case studies with numbers that can help you kind of bolster your business case and maybe spark some ideas that you haven't had yet.
Yeah, I'd echo that. This is Jay from Medox, and I just want to emphasize the point, if if your groups have evaluated using these technologies in the past, and I can tell from the audience that many of you have, for us with superconductors specifically, this is our best chance to do these projects and have them be partially funded and could really lead to increased adoption going forward. So I would view this as an opportunity not just for um, this one project, but for broader technology adoption going forward. And echoing the other participants, we're happy to help with concept papers and get these across the finish line.
Yeah, thanks, Jay. And if I could just add one thing, I'm Paige Rodriguez with CTC Global. We make advanced transmission conductors. Along with case studies, I think CTC Global and likely many of the other vendors on this call also have in-house engineers. I can speak on behalf of CTC that we're happy to offer their expertise to help with these concept papers as well.
And if I could just jump in really quickly, Julia, you've said this a couple of times, but I just really want to emphasize for folks, it's a 4-page paper. It's so doable. I recognize that the timeline is short, but I would just really strongly encourage anyone that's considering applying. You've got a great ecosystem of support here, including these vendors, myself, the Great Plains Institute. But to get the concept paper across the finish line is not going to take a whole lot of effort, really, when it comes down to it. And it preserves the option to go through the full application. And that's just a really critical opportunity. So I just want to encourage folks, if you're thinking about it, but a little bit hesitant, it's worth pushing for because you have a great opportunity for some significant funding for projects that I'm sure will be very helpful to whatever regions you're thinking about.
And just Robert Mork again with Heimdall Power. Just to put a cherry on top of that, there's no reason not to include several of these technologies in your application. There's no commitment. There are opportunities here. Many of our technologies are complementary to one another. DLR can help make sure that you're managing your transmission grid when you've got limited capacity because you've got lines out for reconductoring and so forth. There are many ways these things fit together, and including, all the options, sprinkles on the donut on this, we like to call it, makes a lot of sense at the concept paper level.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, thank you for your great questions. One more just came in. Whether the slides will be available. They absolutely will. I'll send them today. So we'll send these slides and please let us know what would be most helpful to you. Happy to connect folks by email. You have everyone who's on the panel. I think you have their email or their colleague's email. So please reach out and let us know how we can help. Like I said, or here, let's just put this number back on 1.9 billion in federal matching funds for grid modernization for capacity, reliability, affordability. This is a huge opportunity for utilities and states, and just excited that it's happening. So with that, I think I can let everyone go, but thank you for joining and be in touch.